Chestnuts.
Welcome back to Where You Live with Gene and Tony. It's good to have you with us today. We are broadcasting from the Concierge Landscape Studios, and we're brought to you by Extreme Exteriors. If you're just joining us, we want to wish you a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and a Happy Holidays, New Year from all of us here at Where You Live and from New Concepts. We also like to let you know we've got a great resource for you that's available. All you need to do is give us a call to start receiving this bi-monthly newsletter. A lot of the stuff that we cover on the radio show is covered in further detail. In that newsletter, a lot of the folks that we've had on the show also write for that newsletter. All you need to do is give us a call at 952-922-2500. Ask for Courtney, and we'll make sure that you start receiving that subscription. Well, next we have a story, and this is talking about the Occupy Wall Street movement, but now the Occupy movement has now starting to occupy vacant bank-owned foreclosures in homeowner associations. And so let's begin here, and this is from December 13th, 2011. Communities throughout the nation have been faced with the launch of a campaign called Occupy Our Homes. Tony, I think that's a misnomer right from the start.
Yeah.
I think they're forgetting a letter, and that should be the letter Y. It should be, I think what they mean is occupy your homes, because these people
we'll
are
find
not.
out why.
These people are not talking about having people occupy their
own homes. Yeah.
No, they want to occupy other people's homes, and so they say, "Occupy our homes," which is a public showdown against big banks now and public housing authorities. This campaign is targeted for occupancy in units acquired by banks in the foreclosure process or government-owned units which are vacant. These occupiers have been quoted as identifying vacant homes, breaking into them, moving people into the units, and their defense is that housing is a human right, therefore it should be available for occupancy, whether legal or not.
So these are a group that do not believe in property rights.
No.
We've had this discussion on the program before.
Yeah, I think
they
started.
don't believe in private property rights.
Yeah, this started. We heard about this first over a year ago, probably
a couple years ago, I think in Wisconsin, wasn't
Wisconsin and Madison, exactly,
Yeah.
where people were saying that homes ought to be used for people who need them. Now, at face value, that sounds like a kind statement.
Well, I can understand the impulse behind it. It seems like a terrible wasted resource to have all of these vacant bank-owned homes sitting unoccupied. I understand that is not the best situation and not the best use of anyone's assets. However, that's private property. So, I don't know. To me, we have to respect property rights.
Yes. In this article, the person who's writing says that there's an argument in favor of occupying homes this way. And there are people saying, well, if you allow this to happen, if you allow people to just take over a foreclosed unit, change out the locks, put someone in indiscriminately, it would be a unit or a home that would be better maintained than if it were just vacant, thereby improving the appearance of the unit and raising property values. What do you think of that argument?
Well, it goes on to say the big question is whether these types of occupants would really spend money to maintain the home. I don't think it's proven anywhere. This is an assumption and a theory that simply occupying the home will give those people a sense of belonging and a sense of, dare I say, ownership. Yeah, even though they don't believe in ownership. I think the very fact that they're willing to break into private property and they have no regard for property rights indicates that they would have no reason to maintain the property.
Yes, or to even think of being interested in any stretch of the imagination to the association or concerned about their rules and regulations or governing documents.
Right.
Clearly, they don't think that rules are for everybody else but them.
That's right.
There are other issues, though, with that, too. One of the things that comes to mind is, okay, you've moved someone into a home that's been vacated. Number one, what if that home has gone through a winter and was not winterized properly, and so there's pipes that broke? Are these people now going to not use the plumbing?
Yeah.
Or are they going to use the plumbing and say, well, hey, it's not our home. We don't care if things are
How about
damaged.
if just the water has been shut off because of non-payment? The city doesn't turn the water back on until that past due amount is paid.
Yes.
So it's very possible that someone would be living here without plumbing.
And so now, are you talking about anything that's going to be improved, or is going to be more of a detriment?
Yeah, that's right. The article does go on, I think, to bring up some interesting questions for homeowners associations. The attorney that wrote this suggests that an association review its governing documents to see if there is some kind of process to deal with squatters in a home. And I think that's a valuable thing to do, a valid thing to do. It's always difficult for an association, it seems, to figure out if they have the authority to enter a home or control a home when it's been abandoned.
Well, you're right. I think what the attorney may be bringing up is the idea of someone's living in the home, and so if they don't own it, they're renting, and so now this would fall under renters' rights, possibly.
Maybe. I think
unlawful detainers. How would you get in? Let's say in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Could you evict someone? You say, do they own the home? No. So the association doesn't have the ability to foreclose and have them evicted. And so then in UD court...
Well, let's not confuse us. The association could foreclose on this unit and then could move the people out.
Yes.
Right. But the association can't just step in and file an eviction order because they don't own it.
Because if they went to court under that pretense, the first thing that the court official is going to ask is, let me see the lease that shows that they're in violation.
Well, not necessarily, because there's a verbal lease is legal.
Okay, you're right.
There's a couple points here. One is in Minnesota, even if people are squatting illegally in your rental property, you still have to go through the eviction process to get rid of them. Even if they're not on your lease, even if you have no agreement with them whatsoever. And this happens to landlords when they've rented to someone who was approved. That person lets a friend move in and then they move out. The first person moves out. Then the landlord's stuck with this second person they know nothing about. They have no signed agreement with them, but if they want to get rid of them, they still have to go through a legal eviction process. So if an association is trying to get rid of squatters, I'm guessing they'd have to look at the eviction process, but then once they're in court, isn't the judge going to say who owns this property? And an association, how do you have the legal authority to evict these people if you don't own this property? That's where I see the issue.
So the bottom line here, I think, is that with an association, they need to really begin to think of an emergency plan.
That's right.
If this is going to take place.
That's right.
And this is something that very likely could take place. We don't want to be certainly alarmist, but one of the reasons why property can be maintained and managed well is because you're thinking ahead of other eventualities. And if this is something that is going to continue to take off, that's something that could be very real for a number of associations.
That's right. Now, many associations are passing rules or amendments for their landlords that says you have to tell your renter or you have to include in your lease a clause that says if they violate the association rules, the association can evict them. They want that clause added to a lease. Now, my argument has always been no one really knows if that's legal. No one really knows if that clause can be enforced. If the landlord doesn't want to evict the renter, can the association really step in and evict the renter for violating its rules? We don't. It hasn't been tested.
But what? Even though that has not been tested, that would not necessarily mean that wouldn't be written or tried, because that's
Sure.
how something becomes law.
There you go.
Is that it becomes tested. Someone says,
That's
"Wait
right.
a minute, this clause has been in there. Now
Yeah.
we're enforcing
Yeah.
this, and
Yeah.
and see what happens." The bottom line here is the same thing as we talked about in that very first story too. The first priority of the association in any situation like this is to identify who the owner is. In this particular
That's
case,
true.
is it going to be the bank because they've begun foreclosure proceedings? Perhaps the bank hasn't, and the homeowner walked away like they did in the first story.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, then the association ought to take a look at stepping up
And
foreclosing so
That's
that
right.
they can take control. Then that allows them to have the authority.
That's right. That's right. I want to mention one more thing. If an association does foreclose on a unit, takes control, starts to rent it out, once the mortgage company forecloses and forecloses its lien on the property, then the property is owned by the mortgage company, and the association no longer gets to collect that rent. I just want to mention that. So you want to make sure you've got a few months cushion there where you will collect the rent.
Yep.
Also, in the state of Minnesota, at least till the end of 2012, any lease signed with a renter has to be honored by a mortgage company. So even if this is an answer to your renters going, hey, I don't want to rent a place that might go into
Right.
foreclosure. All right. Your lease will be honored until the end of the lease. You just might have a new landlord. Yeah.
That's right. Well, hey, we need to take another quick break. Folks, we will be back after these messages. You're listening to Where You Live with Gene and Tony on AM 1280, The Patriot.